still to believe. You give point and purpose to this time, and I am still to believe. You give salt and substance to the rhyme.
What a beautiful piece. How can I possibly follow up on that? Talk about an insurmountable task. Right. Well, I've got my man-size Kleenex, so we're all good. All right. How wonderful this is. Both a gift and a privilege to stand here in front of you all. Thank you all for taking the time to travel and to celebrate the gifts that my dad gave to us all. There's so many of you. I'm looking at you as well in the hall. At least we can truly say that you finally managed to pack out a venue. I kid. He would have loved to have been here. But then again, it's probably good that he's not, because his head would... He hated praise. But he is here. He's in our minds. He's in our laughter. And he's in our hearts. We as a family have been inundated with stories and sentiments about how he's touched each and every one of us. Like I wrote in the order of service, your support and kindness have given us more strength and reasons to smile than you can possibly imagine. We are so lucky to have you here. It's sad that it needs something as fatal as death to bring people together like this, but also in its way, it serves as kind of solace for the tragedy. But seriously, as Stephen often said, in a really sincere and heartfelt tone, of all of the audiences that I've had, you really are, without doubt, my most recent. And it's great to see you all in casual dress. And see a colour. And I assure you that we didn't choose casual dress because this is all I had in my suitcase. Stephen would have wanted it. Barry, a member of the church and a dear friend, said, "Why can't I wear a black suit? It's the only colour your dad ever wore." And that's true. For all of the colour he gave to us in many ways, he was always very vanilla when it came to his dress sense. But I suppose that's because he wasn't vain. We as a family did do our very best to kit him out in a wardrobe, but I suppose he fancied himself as a bit of a Mark Zuckerberg. But what a surreal moment. We could easily be here for another one of Stephen's services, and for him to bounce on out of that door with his guitar strapped to his chest, bursting into one of his songs. But this time it's different. This time it's a sort of twisted, this is your life show. There's no big red book on this occasion. He won't be coming out of those curtains in any earthly form. This time, we're here to celebrate his gifts. How can one possibly comment on a man's life such as Stephen's and do it any kind of justice? It's near impossible. But before I comment on my dad's life, I must start with his death. He died on the 8th of February due to an unbeknown brain aneurysm abruptly erupting. But although far, far too premature, he died in the most perfect way. He died doing something he loved, playing guitar. That very one there. And that offers us immense solace. Wow, check out the reverb on that chord, he said, when he suddenly became dizzy, lightheaded, and his world instantly floated away. He left on a high, literally and figuratively speaking. As he fell, he naturally slumped in a way that saved his guitar from a single scratch, displaying his good old Scottish frugality right up until the end in the most divine way. There was no pain, we were assured of that. He experienced a slight dizziness and would have, for a split second, attributed it to his vertigo. No fear. When I flew up and saw him lying there, unconscious and linked up to machines keeping him artificially alive, he looked better than he had done in decades. He looked rested. He looked relaxed. He looked exactly like he did when he'd just fall asleep watching a film, which made it seem like he could just wake up at the sound of "Dad." But of course, he didn't. But he did look in good shape. He's looking trim. And he just had a haircut for the occasion. But most importantly, he looked peaceful. And although his spirit had long gone, his condition instilled an enormous sense of peace in me and in us as a family. There was no degradation, no progressive weakening, no distress, no horror, no pain. He thought he'd leave all that for Manchester United. Being so sudden and unforeseen, his death has brought an overwhelming sense of clarity and focus on crucial things. Life is the best thing that we have, but it's also brutally fragile and finite. How can death come so abruptly for someone who is so full of life? The flame that danced with so much energy, now extinguished, gone from sight. It just shows we all assume that we'll live until we're old, but no one in this room can confidently say that they will still be living tomorrow. Pivotal things like this remind us all not to take things for granted, time being the single most significant and valuable. It's a shame that someone so close to us has to die in order for us to be kicked into valuing life more. But of course, that's the harsh reality of life, and that's death. So, seize the day. Please don't wish or waste your time away. As Stephen sang, live now. Now, let's switch up the tone. Let's have a bit of fun. I've called this segment Stephen's Gift of Laughter, because after all, how can one possibly speak about Stephen without talking about his humour? Stephen and laughter go hand in hand. You simply don't get one without the other. Laughter is good for the soul. I found a piece that Stephen wrote that summed up his thoughts about the appropriateness of humour in church, which I'd like to read out as a precursor. As Stephen said, I was once called by a church member in Gatley who was listening to a phone-in discussion on BBC Radio. The discussion was about humour in the church. She wanted me to phone in and say what I thought. I said I would listen to the programme for a little while at first. I did so, and I was really dispirited by what I heard. Caller after caller came on the line saying the same rather nervous thing. Oh, it's not very fitting. We should be more serious and solemn in church. Now, I'm not against seriousness or solemnity. Of course, we need those in church. But I wanted to make a case for humour. So I phoned up and was put straight through. I said that if humour is part of what it means to be human, and if worship is an offering of our whole selves to God, then humour, as such, cannot be inappropriate alongside proper solemnity and dignity. After all, if you incorporate both, you have the chance of mirroring the lights and shades we all feel at different times. The New Testament's call is to rejoice with those who rejoice and to weep with those who weep. And through the shared laughter and the shed tears, I have had the privilege of trying to live up to that call throughout my ministry, he said. Oh, I thought that was wonderful. For those of you who knew Stephen for more than about 3 seconds, you'll have been victim to one of his jokes. The earth has lost a great man, but heaven has certainly gained a comedian. Wherever he was, whatever the situation, no matter how serious it was, he just couldn't help himself. At funerals he conducted, he and the funeral director would say, "What happens in the hearse stays in the hearse." My dad would often get phone calls into the house. Often it'd be a young lady, invariably quite nervous, saying, "Excuse me, is that Reverend Brown?" Aye, it is. How can I help you?" Hen, "Well, I was wondering if you could perhaps marry me." "Oh, that's lovely. I'd love to, but I'm afraid I'm already married." We'd be out having dinner, and someone from the neighbouring table would sneeze. "Bless you." And from me, it's official. Pointing to his dog collar. Sorry, clerical collar. The dog collar. He loved his dog collar. It's the minister's equivalent to a police badge. It'd get him out of all sorts of sticky situations. He'd accidentally bump into someone. "Oh, sorry. Why ordered? Oh, hello, Father. How are you?" There were often chaotic times in the Brown household where he'd regularly misplace his collar. Invariably minutes before an important service, and out of desperation would fashion one out of anything that was white. A4 paper, pulled out the printer, bits of birthday cards yanked off the mantelpiece, bit of napkin shoved in his pocket. No one knew, no one ever knew. It's fine. "Stephen, what's that? Is that ketchup?" "Oh, I think I must have cut myself shaving." "Does that say happy birthday?" He'd tell me of a time when he used to go to weddings as a young man, when his elderly relatives would dig in with their elbow and say, "Oh, you'll be next." They soon stopped doing that when he did the same to funerals. I'm sorry. He'd be turning in his lock if he knew I said that at his funeral. Sorry, Dad. He did have a wicked sense of humour, though. Come on. One from the pre-Jan era. I was told about a time he and a friend of his went to a few university dances together. Some formal, some not. At the formal ones, he would gleefully get dressed in his kilt and all the accessories, and they would walk the mile to the student union. On the way one night, they were both talking about whether they might find some dance partners, and his friend noticed 2 young women slightly ahead of them on the pavement. One of them was a stunning red-haired Irish girl, and the other one, not quite so much. He said to my dad, "Why, there you go, 2 dance partners right in front of us." My dad looked at him with his impish smile and said, "Aye, 2 lassies, right enough. But I don't like the look of your one much." Wicked sense of humour. Fast forward 30-odd years, I felt sorry for my mum. One of his personal favourite recyclable jokes, my dad would be standing outside ready to go on a family trip with my mum and the dog Aero sitting on her lap. Just as I'd leave the house, I'd shout, "Have you got the dog?" Only for him to reply, "Yes, and I've got Aero too." He never got tired of that one, My poor mum. Once, when one person in his congregation, who, with my mother's birthday looming, asked my dad, "So, what are you getting for your wife?" was quite surprised when he responded, "Why, what are you offering?" Wicked sense of humour. But he thought the world of her, he really did. Now, you'll know him for playing music in church, in schools and so on, but he's been known to play in slightly unconventional venues. A particular one of note was at Strangeways Prison in Manchester. Now, this is a high-security male prison, housing some of the most violent offenders. So he thought he'd crack a joke after the last song. They finished the song, and after the applause, it went quiet. And he said, "Now, I must say this. Out of all of the audiences that I played for, you truly have been the most captive." Safe to say they didn't play their encore. But I couldn't make a speech on this occasion without mentioning his penchant for gardening. You all know how he spent many happy hours in the manse garden, cutting the grass, pruning the bushes, weeding the beds. Oh, what happy times he had. As he once said, he'd rather subscribe to the story of the bishop cycling through a village and coming across a man busy in his garden. The bishop stops, sighs, and says aloud to the man, "That's what I like to see, the fruits of God and humanity working together in perfect harmony." "Huh?" said the man, disgruntled. "You should have seen this place when God had it to himself." Yes, he subscribed to that story because as far as he was concerned over manse gardens, God, you can have them. You're welcome to them. Some of you might remember that story from his pearly days. What was especially funny about my dad is that he would be hilarious even when he wasn't meaning to be. For all of his talents, it's safe to say that his prowess for constructing IKEA DIY flat packs is worth a particular mention. As children, we used to invite friends round and sell popcorn to watch the show of him having a breakdown as he kneel down, shouting at planks of chipboard. "Why won't you fit together?" He had the innate ability, and I'm going to call it an ability to make it sound like it's a good thing, to laugh uncontrollably at his own jokes, no matter how many times he told them, because he found them genuinely funny. He would be after me doubled over, tears coming out of his eyes, screaming with laughter, even before he got to the punchline. We often ended up being doubled over laughing, not at his joke, but at him finding it funny. It's a great talent if your manner of telling the joke is even funnier than the punchline. His jokes provide us with great memories and laughter. But it's not just his jokes that people remember. He left such a rich legacy, and though he's not now here in person, his influence remains. How could it not? For here was a man who crammed so much creativity into a lifetime, however short. Many people here will remember him for his services. His services would inspire, inform. His services would entertain, surprise. His services would turn heads or even shock. Should have chosen Mars bar with me. It's fine. He always made use of a really good prop, no matter how irrelevant it was to the general message he was trying to portray. Excuse me, that was lovely. The celebration chocolate being a recent favourite of his, if you saw his services in Helensburgh. I almost thought about reenacting his famous swallowing a live goldfish trick. I'll give you a spoiler though, it involves a slice of carrot. He left us with memories, but also with a wealth of timeless material. Described perfectly by Carol Ann, Stephen's bandmate, as being prolific but chaotic. Chaotic referring to his filing system more than the actual content. I interpreted. We're so lucky to have reams and reams of his writing, dozens of sound bites from demos, and of course the finished studio albums. But this leads me to perhaps the greatest gift of all, life. Last week, some of you may know that we received a letter from the hospital confirming perhaps the most comforting thing about this whole ordeal. Recently, a man in his early 40s, a family man, took a severe allergic reaction to prescribed medication and was described as at death's door. Within a matter of hours of my dad being officially declared deceased, one of his livers had been successfully installed into this man. We are told that the man is now out of intensive care and is making a good recovery. Now, if that's not comfort, what is? What is? Many more of his organs and body parts have been retrieved and preserved and are likely to be utilised for life-saving or life-changing operations. The family would like to express their deep gratitude for all of the staff at the intensive care unit at Larbert's Forth Valley Hospital for their care of Stephen, all of whom couldn't have been more pleasant or attentive. I'm a huge advocate of organ donation, because if you think about it, what good are your healthy organs in the ground when they can potentially save lives? What a wonderful thing science is. What a wonderful thing science is. My dad will have not been fearful of death, nor did he have a fear of confronting and exploring arguably the most conflicting themes of all time, science and religion. He loved dancing around and exploring the intersections between the two. He had brought many people together in marriage, but he conducted no finer marriage than the subjects of science and religion in a sort of profound matrimony. He loved the fact that we've borrowed atoms that make us from the cosmos, from stars, and using them for the most glorious thing, life. My dad had an insatiable passion for curiosity and wonder, so I cannot talk about him without mentioning his fascination for astronomy, and specifically cosmology. Many people thought, you're a minister, how can you believe in both the Big Bang and God? Now, I think it takes a smart person to be able to truly believe in both and stand up every week to preach the word of God. But he would, and he would eloquently blend his scientific values with his glorious and unrelenting faith. He believed that religion doesn't have to necessarily be the enemy of science, they can cohabitate. Where many would view the behemoths of science and religion as a catastrophic clash, he viewed them as an opportunity for profound understanding, profound vision, and in this field, he truly was a visionary. He would have hosted and orchestrated the most wonderful and interesting dinner party with pro and anti-religious authors. He would have had Richard Dawkins eating out the very palm of his hand, mainly because he would have forgot to get enough dinner plates for everybody. That's beside the point, that's beside the point. Sorry, that was a terrible joke. Come on. I've got an excuse. He wrote them vicariously through me. All right? Not my point. So I'm joking. I'm kidding. So what do I think of him? No, I'm joking. He was the most compassionate, selfless, and altruistic people I knew. I have an enormous sense of pride in him. And I always thought of him as quite a cool dad. He rarely embarrassed me, although I'd never admit it to him. He always drew positive attention to the family and I, something that I've always found welcome. He instilled in me the thirst for knowledge and the curiosity to question and wonder. I marvelled his intellect, admired his tenacity. He always followed up on his dreams. His dreams were not just pipe dreams. Well, unless he was dreaming about bagpipes. I guess. Another bad joke. But all in all, through his inspiration, he provides the fuel that drives me. We shared many good memories together. We witnessed one of his true loves, Inverness Caledonian Thistle, win the first division at Inverness a few years ago, even though we almost lost all our fingers due to frostbite. We didn't really get frostbite, but it was cold. He was great at encouraging my interests as well. When I was younger, I used to love the American wrestling. I remember him taking me along to a small production wrestling show over at a local venue in London. Little did he know that it wasn't a very PG show, and I'd learned almost all of the profanity I know today on that single night. He got a lot of dad points that night. A lot of dad points. I think he did a lot of praying after it as well, mostly of the apologetic nature. These memories live on. Death ends a life, but not a relationship. And the relationship I have with my dad will flourish more so now than perhaps any time before. I share the belief that life lives on in memories. The life of the dead is placed in the memory of the living. He will live on as the energy in our electrical impulses in our brain. Let's keep that energy alive. Now, this is a time of change for us all. And although today is a closure of sorts, in many ways it's an opening as well. We mourn, but more importantly, we celebrate. Yes, we'll miss him, but as the saying goes, life goes on. We just have to make sure that we never forget. But how could we? It's perhaps foolish and wrong to mourn his death. Rather, we should be thankful that such a man lived. Let us not waste tears of sorrow. Let's use that energy for good. Let us use them as water to quench the thirst of our passions. So, I speak for myself, I speak for the family, I speak to his friends, I speak for his colleagues, his congregation, his students. I speak for each and every child who's listened to his assemblies. I speak to everyone who went to one of his gigs, who listened to his radio show, who watched him on television with Richard and Judy, who listened to him in Parliament with Ben Elton. I speak for all those who have been touched by his word, song, and influence. We thank you for your gifts, and we thank you for being you. Now, I'm almost at the end, and I know you thought I'd never get there. I know, I thought I'd never get there either. I was writing this thing, I was like, right, I've got far too much material, but I don't have time to cut it out, so I'm just going to say, oh. But actually, this is an important point. Before I finish, I just want to make you aware that we are collecting for Save His Children. So I personally am looking forward to you all save the children. Save, that's important, okay? My mistake. And now we're going to play another song from his band's new album. It's the title track for the new release, However Far. It needs no introduction. The lyrics speak for themselves. He really wanted this album to be a success. And I know they do say that an artist's work is only really valuable once they're dead. But Dad, did you really have to go and do a David Bowie on us? They're available at the back and in the hall at a very, I'd say good price at £10 each. And today only we're putting on a special celebration promotion, 2 for £20. While stocks last, of course. Don't all rush. If that's not a shameless plug, I don't know what it is, honestly. But before I play the track, I'll leave you with a piece of writing we found scribbled in a notepad in his jacket pocket. Perhaps one of the last collection of words that he penned. how few things can last, how restless it seems, how within our brief span, with every moment, a chance. Don't risk regret taking hold, each day a gift cast in gold. New tales are yet to be told in time.